Welcome to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Soccer Morning here on WorldSoccerTalk.com. Yeah, we are just a little delayed on a Tuesday. It's raining. It's ugly. It's nasty outside. Maybe that's why. Maybe just the brain synapse is not firing as usual, but we are ready to go. Good to have you here. We've got a lot of soccer topics to cover. We're going to have open phone lines today. It looks like one of those days when it's going to be your opportunity to drive the conversation. I've got a couple of things we can definitely talk about, but let's get this show all about you here at Soccer Morning. Make sure you write down the phone number and save it into your phone and label it me, I guess, if you want to, or label it Soccer Morning. 646-832-3909 is the phone number. That way you have it. That way it's ready to go. Let's get the news started here, and then we'll roll into the phone calls. Let's start with the news that City Football Group, CFG, the owners of Manchester City, New York City FC, Melbourne City, and a part owner of a Yokohama team in Japan, Yokohama F. Marinos, now has Chinese investment. A consortium of Chinese investors has spent $400 million to gain a 13% stake in City Football Group. There's a lot of questions about what this means exactly, what this money will be used for. Really, this is about City Football Group not only getting some investment, but also reaching out into the Chinese market, which, of course, they imagine will be a fairly large one for football in the very near future. Lots of people trying to get into the American market and into the Chinese market. Those are the two up-and-coming places for football clubs, football outfits like CFG to get involved. There is the best overview I've seen of this comes from, believe it or not, the Daily Mail. So we'll check in on some of these details as we go along here. But as I said, $400 million for a 13% stake in City Football Group. Remains to be seen what this money, what they'll do with this. Of course, it doesn't really necessarily mean that they're going to spin this into, say, buying Cristiano Ronaldo or buying Lionel Messi, something like that. New York Red Bulls have picked up the contract option of Dax McCarty for 2016. This clears up some questions I had yesterday about the status of Mr. McCarty with the New York Red Bulls. He just finished his fourth full season in New York. He did join in the middle of 2011. He made the best 11 for 2015, his first time making that team and the first time for that honor in his career. Dax McCarty, crucial to what the New York Red Bulls did this season, a guy they have to hold on to. Not sure what his option was, but he's probably not making enough, to be honest with you. This is a league that often undervalues American players. We'll check on the MLS salaries here a little bit. Of course, these are not always deemed to be completely accurate when the Players Union releases salary information. Sometimes these numbers are off by a good amount, and players and owners will say so. Let's actually check on this. I have this up here. Dax McCarty in 2015 made $220,000 in base salary and $262,000 in guaranteed compensation. Certainly one of the higher earners among American players, but not probably underpaid. Yesterday on the field, Napoli beating Inter Milan 2-1. Napoli holds on to win despite a furious final minute in which I believe Inter hit the post at least twice. A couple of fantastic saves from the Napoli goalkeeper to keep the lead and to give Napoli a big home victory that now puts them atop the Serie A standings over Inter Milan by 1 point after 14 matches played. Napoli on 31 points, Inter Milan on 30 points. Fiorentina, Roma, and Juve rounding out the top five in Italy. So there's your big match of a Monday. Matches today, the Capital One Cup. We've got Manchester City hosting Hull City, Stoke hosting Sheffield Wednesday, Middlesbrough hosting Everton. There is one game tomorrow in the Capital One Cup. That game is Liverpool. The last quarterfinal game is Liverpool. If I could just get this to reload here. Apologies for that. Visiting Southampton. So your quarterfinalists there in the Capital One Cup. Southampton and Liverpool tomorrow. Manchester City, Hull City, Middlesbrough, Everton, Stoke, and Sheffield Wednesday. Who's going to win the third most important trophy in English domestic football? Who's excited to go after what was it used to be called? It was just, I know it's the League Cup, but what was it, the previous sponsor? Because it's Capital One Cup now. I feel like it was something else. Was it some beer or something? Or am I wrong about that one? The Carling Cup. Was it the Carling Cup before? Maybe that's what it was. Maybe I'm right about the beer thing. Yeah, I think that's what it was. And, so a trophy that's not really that important, but there you go, quarterfinal stages, getting down to the nitty-gritty in that competition. Lionel Messi, named La Liga's best forward and best player for 2014-15, the sixth time he has won that award. Ronaldo actually beat him out last year, so Messi back top of the heap. Of course, 43 goals over the course of the season, helped his team to a La Liga title and a Champions League title in Europe as well. So big year, another one for one of the greatest players of all time, Mr. Lionel Messi. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we will open up the phone lines, talk to you on a Tuesday. It's one of those days. Like I said, it's raining here, but we can pick up the mood a little bit, talk about some soccer, all of these topics and more. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
All right, we are back on Soccer Morning on a Tuesday. Phone lines are open, 646-832-3909. 646-832-3909 is your phone number. Yeah, looking at the history of the League Cup, because it's now a topic because I mentioned it. I was wrong. It's not. It was the Carling Cup. It was the Carling Cup, but it was, okay, I'm reading this wrong. So it was the Carling Cup previous to the Capital One Cup. So I was right about that. Before that, it was the Worthington Cup from 98 to 2003. Before that, it was the Coca-Cola Cup from 92 to 98. Before that, Rumbelows. Somebody English, tell me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Rumbelows? Rumbelows Cup for 3 years from 90 to 92. They are an electrical and electronics retailer. Rumbelows. Where's the stress? Where's the accent That okay. Before that, the Littlewoods Challenge Cup. Before that, the Milk Cup. And then before that, just the Football League Cup. So lots of names for this cup. Now, this, it's the sponsorship of the Capital One Cup, Carling Cup, whatever you want to call it, that has people wondering why we do not have sponsorship for the U.S. Open Cup. Now, clearly, the FA Cup does not have a sponsor. I believe the FA Cup has a sponsor, but we don't call it the whatever cup. We just call it the FA Cup because of the history of that. It's actually, did anybody know this? Raise your hand out there if you knew that the current sponsor of the FA Cup is Emirates Airlines, and it's technically called the Emirates FA Cup. Raise your hand if you knew that. I don't think I knew that until just now when I looked it up, because it's just the FA Cup. I'm not calling it the Emirates FA Cup. That tournament, the history, the openness, obviously the everyone in English football being allowed to enter that tournament makes it a much more interesting tournament. And the cachet of that tournament means we don't call it the Emirates FA Cup, because why would we do that? We just call it the FA Cup. But for whatever reason, the Capital One Cup gets called the Capital One Cup and not the League Cup because, I don't know, whatever. It's a thing. So why does the U.S. Open Cup not have a sponsor? That's a good question. I mean, don't you think that somebody, somewhere, I mean, I know this is a little bit like how MLS refuses some shirt sponsorship deals because they don't meet their standards in terms of value or, I guess, name recognition. I guess. I mean, we've had Zango, and we've had, let me just see if I can get a list of MLS shirt sponsors, not just the current ones, but the overall history. Does somebody have a list of the shirt sponsorships in MLS history? Because we've had some pretty sketchy shirt sponsors, right? I mean, over the course of the last, 10 or 15 years, we've had some shirt sponsorships that weren't necessarily, the pedigree of the companies was not necessarily of the kind to lift up the MLS name brand, if you know what I mean. If you know what I mean. So right now, okay, I just have right now. Chicago has Quaker. That's good. Colorado Rapids has Transamerica. Is that on their shirt? Am I missing that? Is that new? Maybe I haven't been paying attention to the Colorado Rapids enough to know if the Transamerica is on the front of their shirt. It's not, right? Is that new? Is that coming? That's coming. That must be coming. Okay. So I'm just going to put that one aside. Barbasol for Crew SC. They're getting a lot of run. MLS Cup finalists. Big stuff for Barbasol. Leidos, a government contractor for DC United. How appropriate there. Advocare for FC Dallas. We know all about that. BHT Billiton for the Houston Dynamo, whoever that is. Herbalife. We know about Herbalife. Bank of Montreal. Okay. We know that. BMO. United Healthcare for the Revolution. Etihad Airways for NYCFC. We know that. Orlando Health for Orlando City. Bimbo Bakeries for Philadelphia Union. Alaska Airlines for the Timbers. Life Vantage for Real Salt Lake. Let's go with those. Yeah, Pyramid. Yeah, okay. Seattle Sounders, Xbox. Sporting Kansas City, IV Funds. Toronto FC, BMO as well. Bank of Montreal. Vancouver Whitecaps, Bell Canada. And obviously you have the Red Bulls who wear Red Bull because they're Red Bulls. I don't know. I'm just thinking like the sponsorship thing had me thinking about the MLS shirts, but really what we're talking about here is the Capital One Cup and the Coca-Cola Cup and the Milk Cup, and why there's not a name brand sponsor for the U.S. Open Cup. Slap somebody's name on it for a couple $1,000,000. Get a lot. You get the value of a couple $1 million out of that, right? Or not? Do we think so, or do we? Okay, whatever. 646-832-3909, or hit us up on Twitter at Soccer Morning. You got Bo Durr and Nick Murray and everybody else chiming in on the sponsorship situation. Rob Rice, have you discussed Ballon d'Or finalist No Lewandowski? Okay, did Robert Lewandowski have enough of a calendar year to merit Ballon d'Or consideration? Or is that just a recency effect, Rob? Because I feel as though maybe you're responding to the fact that he had an insane couple of weeks where he was, he may be the best goal scoring forward in the world right now. I'm not going to necessarily disagree with that. But does that mean that he is the Ballon d'Or, like a Ballon d'Or candidate? Really? He has been given 4 world record certificates because of his 5 goals in 9 minutes that he scored in September against Wolfsburg. He came off the bench. Bayern Munich's down 1-0. He came off the bench and he scored 5 in 9 minutes. He scored the fastest hat trick in Bundesliga history, 3 minutes and 22 seconds. The fastest 4 goals in Bundesliga history, 5 minutes and 42 seconds. The fastest 5 goals in Bundesliga history, 8 minutes, 59 seconds. Guinness Book of World Records. Is that when I was a kid, maybe I'm wrong about this. When I was a kid, the Guinness Book of World Records was always meant for stuff like the guy who could eat the most pizza or the fattest twins. Remember those guys who rode motorcycles, or the fattest twins? Or I don't know. I can't even remember some of this stuff. Obviously, long jump and athletic stuff was included, but it always felt more about those weirder records, not necessarily the how many goals did you score and how fast you scored them. Because here's the thing about that. That happened in the Bundesliga. It happened on television in How do we know there's not some guy? There probably is some guy who scored like 6 goals in 10 minutes or something, or 5 goals in 8 minutes instead of 8:59. Somewhere in some league in some country that you're not seeing. How do we know this is a world record? I know it's certified now, but how do we know it's a world record? That's what I'm asking. Like, is this? It's an amazing achievement, but I don't know that it's a world. It's a professional soccer world record or what? What are we saying here exactly? Okay, I'm confused. He has scored 26 goals in 25 appearances for club and country this season. Okay. So, Rob, I think maybe we're just stretching a bit on the notion that Lewandowski is a Ballon d'Or finalist. I got no problem with the list. Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar. Are you kidding me? Maybe the only real disagreement I might have is that perhaps Luis Suarez should be on that list. I like Luis Suarez, but he's an amazing player, and he's been amazing for Barcelona. Maybe he's a guy who should be on that list. 646-832-3909. We've got a couple of stories. This one. Let's go to jolly old England again. Talk about what's happening in Bolton Wanderers. This is not good. Okay, so Bolton did not pay their players in November. Bolton Wanderers, who were in the Premier League until relegation in 2012, but are now in difficulties after their owner withdrew financial support, have failed to pay their player wages for November. In a statement, the insolvency practitioner Trevor Birch, who was advising the club, said the failure to pay the first-team squad in November wages was due to, quote, a short-term funding issue. The announcement was made as Neil Lennon's squad, currently bottom of the championship, prepared to play at home to Brentford on Monday night in a match that ended 1-1. So right now, Bolton Wanderers, a team, for a lot of Americans, Bolton is the team of Stuart Holden. That was the club where he played and was part of a Premier League season before suffering his injuries and ultimately having to pull out of his playing career for the time being. And who knows if Stuart will get back on the field. Please, Stuart, get back on the field. And now here they are. Not only are they in the championship, okay, that happens, especially Bolton's more of a yo-yo club than a lot of teams. But now they're bottom of the table. 18 matches in. They have 12 points. They're 3 back of Rotherham. They're 3 back of Huddersfield. They're 4 back of Charlton Athletic. This is bad for Bolton. And now they've got no money to pay their players, at least in the short term. Bad stuff happening in Bolton. Maybe MLS should go raid Bolton for players. Bill in New York, you're on the air.
Jake, what's going on?
What's going on, my friend?
Not much. I couldn't call yesterday. I wanted to call after the playoffs. I know that was going to be the big conversation yesterday. I know you're talking a lot of the English stuff right now. But I just wondering about the English, the FA Cup. If somebody pays you enough money, they'll use their name in front of the FA Cup.
Oh, no, it's there, but I'm saying it's there. Emirates is paying a lot of money, I'm sure, to put their name in front of the FA Cup. But what I'm saying is common usage isn't – we're not going around talking about the Emirates FA Cup games today. If people are looking and saying, what's the schedule for midweek games? Oh, there's a bunch of Emirates FA Cup games. No, they're going FA Cup. They're not saying the Emirates part. Whereas, for whatever reason, the League Cup, that sponsorship sticks much stronger to the League Cup.
But I would almost say, too, with Emirates, if they ever went to the announcers or they went to whoever was getting the money and said, listen, I'm going to double the price I'm giving you, but every time you say FA Cup, I want Emirates in front of it.
I bet you.
Emirates FA Cup.
I bet you that's included in their deal. I mean, it's included. You know, you'll hear it on. Okay, so when Fox talks about the Premier League, they don't say the English Premier League. They say the Barclays Premier League, right? They have to say that part when they refer to the league by an acronym, which is mainly an American thing. They say BPL. They don't say EPL. So that's part of. I think that's probably part of Emirates' sponsorship deal. But I mean, I have never really noticed yes or no whether people are saying Emirates. They probably are, and it's just not clicking in my head that they're saying it.
Yeah, it's not clicking in mine. I haven't noticed that. But I wanted to call about the playoffs this weekend.
Yeah, man, go ahead.
And it was, Columbus was better. End of story. They were the better team. And I would say my number 2 team has always been Portland because I just love the fans out there and the great show that they put on every time. But I hope Columbus wins the whole thing now. I just think, man for man, they were just a better team. I think they're the best team in the league. They outplayed us the entire game. And this would have been one of those things where I think Eddie doesn't like the playoff system. If we would have got that goal at the end of the game and went to extra time and ended up 2-2 at the end of extra time, went down to penalty kick and won on penalty kicks, the better team wouldn't have won. You know, and it's
yeah. Well, I mean, you look, Bill. You know my attitude, and I said this to Eddie too. My attitude is there's sort of 2 different ways to prove you're the best team in MLS. You prove it over 34 games, the way the Red Bulls did, and then you have to prove it again in the playoffs. And, you know, I know it hurts for somebody like the Red Bulls to have 34 games in their pocket and have the most points and have that shield and then not back it up with an MLS Cup or feel as though people discount your season because you didn't win MLS Cup, which is still the big prize. But I mean, I just think that the playoffs are a sort of a different test, and I think that if we wanted to be, while it's great to say over the course of a long season with all the injuries and travel and everything else, the Red Bulls did the best job of everything. It's part of a test of their quality to win the necessary games and get the necessary goals to go win an MLS Cup. I mean, it's just a different test of being the best team.
And this playoff, though, it found the best 2 teams. These are the best 2 teams. And we're getting the best 2 teams playing in the championship. I think it's going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to it, even though my team's not even in.
That's good,
it's going to be a great game. And the playoffs really work. I wanted to say one more thing about Kei Kamara.
Mm-hmm.
Is he the most athletic player we've ever had in MLS?
I mean, I think it's easy to say that because he's scoring a bunch of goals, but I mean, there have been some crazy athletes in this league. But yeah, I mean, he's up there. The guy.
I'm not even talking. I'm sorry. I'm not even talking about him scoring goals. There was a play in the first half of that game, midfield, where he jumped up to get a ball. He literally was over the guy. He looked like he was 6 feet in the air. It was incredible how high up he got. And every time there was a ball in there, he won every single header that got in there. He was getting up higher than every single player on that field. It was great to watch.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing when a soccer player's vertical is getting referenced on this show. I mean, that just doesn't happen. I mean, yeah, of course we've got guys who are great in the air and could get up and jump. I mean, Ronaldo can fly, but you don't really hear a lot of people mentioning. I mean, he's got a well-rounded game. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like a vertical leap as part of the regular soccer discussion. And yet, people talk about Kei Kamara all the time because it is so insane how high up he gets.
It was ridiculous. The whole section around me, everybody said it. Oh, did you see that? It was just him jump up for a ball. Like you said, it was nothing to really do with soccer. just his name jumping up the air ball, and it was incredible to watch.
Yeah, there's by the way, there's if you're interested at all, and if you can get over the fact that your boys lost to him, there's actually, and I'm not a big fan of the guy who does the sports science stuff, but there actually is a sports science segment on Kei Kamara that ESPN did. Talks about his vertical, talks about how many headers he scored, talks about his ability to, to redirect balls in a split second. Basically, one of the things, and I don't have the video. I mean, so it's a video, so it's tough. But it talks about how the ability to redirect a cross into goal based on the speed of the cross and sort of the surface area of your head and all of these various things is actually harder, and you have less reaction time than somebody hitting a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. That's amazing to me.
That is. Yeah, I have to take a look at that video.
There you go, Bill.
But yeah, he set the whole playoffs with 9 seconds redirecting a header.
Yep. He definitely had a major influence. I mean, he wasn't unstoppable from a Red Bull perspective, but they had they have other options, and if he can bring them in, I mean, he scored. I know he scored the second goal in Columbus, which ultimately was the difference. But he was, he happened to be there in the right spot. That wasn't necessarily Kei Kamara taking over, but he could take over in this MLS Cup. We would talk about Kei Kamara, MLS, MLS Cup MVP or whatever, if Columbus gets this job done at home.
Yeah, and it's the whole team. It's the whole Columbus team. I tell you, the whole team was great. I thought they looked good. They're a good team. We lost to a better team, and it just happened.
Yep, there you go, Bill. I like the attitude, man. I mean, it's tough. Thanks for the call. You get beat by a better team, you should recognize you got beat by a better team. I think that's probably hard for Red Bull fans today because it doesn't. You finished top of the heap. You won the Supporter Shield. You were first. You were first in the East. You had the top seed. You had a home, quote unquote, home field advantage. It didn't feel like they were the better team, but right now, in this moment, over those 2 games, over that 180 minutes, they were the better team. And again, we talked about it a lot yesterday, how Columbus managed to transform themselves into a solid defensive unit against the highest scoring team in the league. Surprising, shocking, out of nowhere. I mean, is it fair to say that? Columbus was a high-flying, attack-minded team who had all of the ingredients of a club that could go and make a run at the MLS Cup, but didn't seem to have the defensive strength to get it done. A couple of tweaks, a change in attitude, just veteran influence back there during the playoffs, and boom, all of a sudden they stopped the best team, the best highest-scoring team in the league. I mean, really, how does that happen? How much of that do you put on the Red Bulls? How much do you put on the Columbus? I actually give Columbus credit rather than taking away from the Red Bulls. Did Bradley Wright Phillips disappear? Yeah, he did. But you know what? Columbus made him disappear. Columbus took Bradley Wright Phillips out in that series, and they deserve to be where they are. They deserve to be in an MLS Cup final. All right, so we covered Bolton not being able to pay its players. I'm not sure what that means in the long run. We'll have to keep an eye on that situation there in England. Just a sad situation, just a sad time. And I know some Bolton fans. I imagine it's very tough right now for them, not just because they're bottom of the table, but now because they have this hanging over their heads. And in an era that is so rich with this constant turnover of new investment, whether it's in England or the U.S. or China or whatever. I mean, football is getting a lot of money pumped into it. When your club suffers a financial setback like this, when your club goes through these thrashings, when it's in administration, when players aren't getting paid, when there's questions of solvency, it just doesn't seem right. How can this happen? How can we not have some oil sheik or some Chinese billionaire step in and buy our club? It's tough. Speaking of investment in American soccer, okay, not on the same level, certainly. Little bit of a different situation when you talk about the NPSL. The NPSL, the National Premier Soccer League, an amateur league, a league that is about developing players. There are a lot of teams in the NPSL. How many teams are currently in the NPSL? Anybody want to guess? If you call up right now without looking and can tell me within 2. How many teams are in the NPSL right now? I will give you a Soccer Morning cookie that doesn't actually exist. Whatever, I'll give you something. I'll give you some DAP here on the show. That's a thing. DAP is still a thing, right? How many teams do the NPSL have? Well, they have one more. They have announced a new team entering the NPSL for 2016. Are you ready for this? The National Premier Soccer League is proud to announce that the Rochester, New York, that's a good spot for a team, right? Rochester, New York, the Rochester River Dogs. A river dog is a thing, apparently. They're the Rochester River Dogs. 2 words, River Dogs. Now, that's not the best part. The best part is that not only are they the River Dogs, but dogs is spelled with a Z. Oh, wait, that's not the best part either. Just the Z itself isn't the best part. The best part is that they are the Rochester River Dogs. The dogs is spelled with a Z, and the Z is capitalized. What? I'm sorry. What is this? I have a malfunction here. What's happening? The Rochester River Dogs. D-O-G. Wait, hold on. Capital D, little O, little G, big Z. Because otherwise people wouldn't know that it's edgy, and I don't understand. Is this 1994? When did we get a time machine? What is wrong with Rochester? Who approved this? Okay, let me read through this thing here real quick, okay? The River Dogs. Oh, wait, hold on. We can't even be consistent here in how this is stylized, because this press release has River Dogs as 2 words, of course, with the big Z. And then later on in the press release, it says River Dogs with no space between river and dogs, even though the D is capitalized. What? I can't understand. I don't know what's happening. The River Dogs will be led by an ownership group of 5 individuals and head coach Matt Tantalo. Excuse me. Get your name right. Head coach Matt Tantalo. General Manager Mark Mandel served in the Air Force as a military policeman during Operation Enduring Freedom. He has over 25 years of experience playing and coaching soccer. Mark Lilac, who will serve as vice president, is a career firefighter EMT in Greece, New York. He has over 25 years of experience in soccer, from playing to organizing teams. President Kurt B. Odenbach is a transactional attorney in Rochester, New York. He is active in various charitable organizations in the Rochester community, serving as the corporate secretary of the Salty Dog Charities and corporate officer of the Committee of 25. Robert Ralphison will serve as the equipment manager. Is a U.S. Air Force veteran. I love the Air Force connection. I'm an Air Force brat. That's awesome. He has also worked in the building industry for 30 years and has played soccer for over 40 years. Nick Masovsky, who will serve as treasurer and secretary, 30 years of experience. Which one of you is responsible for calling them the River Dogs? That's what I want to know. Show yourself. Tell me why it says capital Z. I need to understand that. Not only that, the River Dogs. I mean, okay, we've got the Rail Hawks and the River Dogs, and American soccer needs to stop. Okay, it needs to stop. And look, Bobby on Twitter's got a good point. Rochester already has the Rhinos, who used to be the Raging Rhinos, and now it's just the Rhinos. They already got the Rhinos. Why do they need this team? Now, of course, again, this is a developmental league. This is not professional the way that Rochester Rhinos are in USL. So this is clearly a little different of an endeavor. It's not going to cost them that much money, et cetera, et cetera. I have no problem with starting the team. I have a problem with calling them the River Dogs and capitalizing the damn Z, and then I click on the link for the parent website for River Dogs FC, and I get the GoDaddy parking page. I thought we were better than this now. I thought we were over this era of bad names, bad logos, domain problems, website issues. I mean, would I be more surprised if I find the GoDaddy parking page as I have, or if I showed up and there was a bunch of animated GIFs of soccer balls and stuff. I mean, come on, guys. Look, I know. Again, I know it's just it's a developmental league. It's not exactly it's not exactly MLS. It's not exactly the Premier League. But give me something to work with here. I don't want to hate on your team, and I'm not trying to hate on your team. But you called it the River Dogs. Your logo is insanity. There is a skyline. There is looks to be a bridge. There is some water. There are 5 dogs running, alternating in size. The word Rochester. It says River Dogs with the Z. It has 2 paw prints. It has some American flag imagery with the stripes, and it has a ball, the Telstar Classic ball with established 2016. What is happening? I'm just saying. TICC_Nick. You're really mad, dog, with a capital G. It's good. I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. I'm sad. All right. Robert's our friend in Southern California, Robert in SoCal. Haven't talked about Serie A in some time. Napoli, top of the table. We have a guest talk about it soon. We can definitely write down the idea to have a guest, whether it's David Amoyal or Giuseppe LaRocca, one of our Serie A guys. We'll grab somebody to talk about Serie A in the near future. I did mention at the beginning of the show that Napoli has now jumped to the top of the table over Inter Milan via that win yesterday. So that is something to keep an eye on. Of course, it is MLS Cup week. We are building up to that. We will be adding guests to this show and to the satellite radio show in the near future to cover that particular topic. But you guys got to jump in here. 646-832-3909. Give me a call. Let me know what you think about any of these particular stories. Give me your verdict on River Dogs. I mean, if somebody out there is going to somebody defend the name River Dogs, do it for me just because I would love it. It'd be hilarious. Somebody, please. And really, does this? Man, I hate to be cruel about somebody investing in American soccer, but is this the worst name in American soccer? What's the worst club name in American soccer? Go. Twitter, @SoccerMorning, 646-832-3909. Hit it up. Let's go. Brendan in California, you're on the air.
Hey, how's it going, Jason?
It's good. I'm a little worked up this morning.
Yeah, I was just listening to this NPSL debacle going on, but River Dogs is pretty bad. But I was calling basically, MLS Cup on Sunday. I was kind of comparing Portland versus Columbus, and there's a lot of likeness between the two. I mean, if you look at Adi Kamara, you see 2 players that play pretty similar, and I'd almost favor Kamara over the season. Obviously, having a great run, almost winning Golden Boot. You go down and you compare Nagby and Finlay. Nagby's got all the hype right now, but there's no question that Finlay had the better season. If we're looking at strictly assists, as well. I think his production in MLS this year has been, a lot better than Nagby's.
Different players doing different jobs, but I get your point. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of comparisons. Obviously, they're going to be a little bit different. Nagby's role's changed a little bit, but I still just see so many comparisons between these two teams. And you look at like a pair of Flaherty, Higuain, kind of the Argentinian playmaker. I still think over, the course of, their seasons in MLS that Higuain's been more productive. You get a lot of similarities between Berhalter and Porter, and they've been in the league, similar amount of time. I think they're both young coaches, American coaches with, similar mentalities. So I just, there's a lot of similarities between these teams going, if you just go through the list. And, I think it's kind of telling where MLS is heading, and I think it's a lot of progress as well. But I think if you go down the list and look at the quality of players, I think Columbus is certainly favored in this, especially with being at home.
Yeah, I think Columbus has the edge. I don't know. Here, let me see if I can find not that I'm the betting type, but let me see if I can find some odds on this game. 2015 MLS Cup odds. I mean, these may not be. Okay, here we go. It looks like I don't understand these odds at all. Okay, not going to even mention them because I will get all of this wrong. There are odds out there on this game. Clearly, there's. It looks to me like Columbus is favored by a pretty healthy margin. Again, considering that they're pretty even teams. I mean, that's the thing. They finished on the same number of points. They had to go to the goal differential tiebreaker to determine where this game was going to be played. I mean, that's how tight this was. Now, of course, the Timbers played in the Western Conference. People will tell you that's obviously the tougher division in MLS. But Columbus has been committed to their style of play all year long. They went through some rough patches, giving up a lot of goals because they were trying to figure out how to balance out their roles within the team. But when you look at them top to bottom, I think that's a really good, just on paper, consider who they have in each one of these spots. That's a really good team. I mean, there's a lot of teams in this league, even the top ones, even the ones who made playoffs, who could do with a Merrim, who would obviously trade for who obviously would love to have an Ethan Finley. Obviously, Kei Kamara, share of the Golden Boot or share of the top scoring number in the league. Higuain, Chani, Trapp, Affle, Waylon Francis, probably the best left back in MLS in terms of attacking ability. Everybody would love to have a Michael Parkhurst in the middle, and then so Soro's been up and down and out, but most of the time he's been pretty solid, and they have a system that allows them to slot somebody in like Tyson Wall and get the job done.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think Columbus, obviously Portland was in the Western Conference, but I think you just run down the roster like you just did there with Columbus, and I just think they have an unbelievably strong roster, and the credit to Columbus as an organization, but I think overall too, I mean, if you look at Greg Berhalter sticking with his system, he kind of, got a chance over in Europe and learned and kind of, honed his craft over there and then came over here, but he's stuck with the system since he came here. And even when the goals were pouring in or if they had a poor record, I mean, he is stuck with this system, with this, culture, and he's not changing. And I think it's really paid off. So, I mean, Marsh, I think, deserved Coach of the Year, maybe, but Berhalter outcoached Marsh in last series, and I think he's going to be one of the best American coaches we have in this league for a long time to come.
Yeah, it's he doesn't get, and maybe it's because it's still a little bit early, but he doesn't get the kind of chatter behind his future that some of these other guys get. I mean, he's not on the Jason Christ level. Okay, Jason Christ did it over a number of years in Salt Lake City and won a title and took his team to another one before leaving for New York. A guy like Caleb Porter, maybe because of his particular style, which, let's be honest, a lot of people kind of fell in love with the idea of triangles and passing the ball around the park like Barcelona does, and thought that would lead Caleb Porter to the top of the mountain and maybe a U.S. men's national team job. Greg Berhalter's in that conversation. He should be in that conversation. And I had Jared Dubois on the Best Soccer Show say to me, if there were a couple of more pieces, the USA could and should play the way Greg Berhalter plays. That would be a solid way for the United States to maximize the talent that they have available. So it almost makes sense to see Greg Berhalter, maybe not now, maybe not in 2 years, maybe not in 5 years, but down the line, having an opportunity to step into the national team breach and coach that team.
I absolutely agree. And I think it's going to be interesting to see, but we'll definitely see one of these young MLS coaches take that spot. And Berhalter should definitely have a look. So thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
Appreciate the call, Brendan. Brendan out in California talking about MLS Cup and obviously what the Columbus Crew have done to get to this point. I'm trying to find, I thought that I had a couple of years back written a profile on Greg Berhalter. In fact, even talked to him while he was still in Europe, while he was getting his feet wet over there with his managerial career. I'll have to see if I can find it. Not that there's anything of a particular note in it now, but I'm just trying to recall how he talked about his future in managing and coaching. I don't remember if he had an idea of coming back to MLS. Certainly there was the experience in Europe was something I'm sure he wouldn't trade for the world. Very interesting stuff. Let's go to Richard up in Philadelphia. What's up, Richard?
Hey, Jason, how you doing?
Doing well, sir.
All right, I don't know if you guys talked about the, I'm calling him blind, but the Man City Chinese acquisition that happened this morning.
I did mention it off the top of the news, Richard. Any thoughts on it?
It's business-wise, it makes sense. I mean, you do what you got to do to make the point. I'm not mad at them for that. As a public image, it doesn't look good because if you follow the NYCFC issues, they're saying here's another issue of them saying that they don't care about us. They're just trying to make money, profile their image as far as they can. Of course, the talk is now there's not another team being added, so more resources not going to them. And but CFG doesn't look like a good public image, I guess, to the NYCFC.
I mean, come on. With everything else that's happened, this is going to matter? I don't think this matters. I mean, this is such a small thing. I mean, it's a big thing for them as a company, for CFG as a company, but it's a small thing overall in the perception of CFG and their running of NYCFC. I mean, NYCFC has enough problems with the baseball stadium, with the Frank Lampard situation, with firing Jason Kreis, with everything else, that this isn't going to make any sort of dent. Although, I will say, and there's some time, there's plenty of time left to get themselves ready for 2016, but I saw some stats on Twitter. Some numbers said that the Red Bulls are, at 90% renewals on their season tickets, while right now NYCFC is about 50%. Now, again, there's the natural first-year enthusiasm is going to wear off. I don't necessarily blame NYCFC for that, but they have to try to hold on to as much of that enthusiasm as possible, and they got to find a way to get people excited about this team.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, the this stream, the public image looks like they don't care. Whether or not they actually care in real life, that's a totally different thing. Like, I know I follow Melbourne City in Australia. The main look over there is Man City doesn't care about them at all because because what big talk yesterday was, well, Dima Chuss is going to NYCFC on loan, but Melbourne City doesn't get that same kind of issue. So will the Chinese team get the same, kind of help from Man City?
Well, there is no Chinese team yet. We don't know if that's going to happen. So let's see about that first. And as for Melbourne City, yeah, I get them being upset. I mean, they got David Villa for what, like 4 games or something before he made the move. Yeah, I mean, I imagine them. That's the thing. If you're an NYCFC fan or you've latched onto that team or you're looking at CFG and you're considering the way that they're running things, just be glad you're not Melbourne City.
Yeah, but I follow that team, so trust me. I know because early this season they were having a bad run, so they're like going, well, why doesn't Man City send us some loan players like they do on with CFC and all these other teams? And but now they're turning it around. But as a business wise, they're doing the right thing. I read the report, like it's a lot of money to them, and you make that deal 100 times over.
Yeah,
but as a public image, an image of course matters everything in this business. It doesn't look so great,
I suppose. Yeah, I suppose. I guess that's the case, Richard. I don't know that I go that far. I appreciate the call. You got anything else before I let you go?
No, that's it. Have a good day.
All right, so Paulo on Twitter is saying that the Kansas City Wiz is still the worst name of all time. So is Conrad. So we've got 2 votes for the Wiz as the worst name. Now, that's nothing but the worst current name because they're not the Wiz anymore, of course. But I guess that is up there for all-time American soccer, bad American soccer names. But, I mean, there's some bad ones out there. Aaron in Jersey, you're on the air.
Hey, how's it going? I hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
Me too. I'm sorry, me too. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving as well, Aaron. My apologies. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you about Fabian Johnson because obviously we've never spent enough time talking about him over 20 shows. But, I mean, he just seems to keep producing. And, it's going to be interesting to see how he gets, his shot or shots, I should say, to really integrate into the U.S. team. Because, I mean, it's not that he's scoring in a second, third tier league. He's producing in arguably the, let's say worst case scenario, 3rd best league in the world. That's pretty, impressive, I think.
No, sure it is. The question is whether or not Jurgen Klinsmann knows how to put Fabian Johnson on the field in a U.S. shirt that in the same sort of situation that can maximize his abilities the way that Gladbach is right now.
I mean, I think it's in some ways, it's kind of the old school adage is that Johnson's going to make, he's really going to force the issue, because at a certain point, if his production, is anywhere near as it has been recently, I mean, there's almost no way that he's not going to get an opportunity in some ways, almost force the positional change, because I think everyone on the planet kind of agrees he's being played out of position.
Yeah, I mean as with everything, it all comes back to position with Jurgen Klinsmann and whether or not, whether or not he's the kind of guy who can put these players in a position to succeed, or whether he is so committed to his notion of flexibility and again, I think Jurgen Klinsmann overthinks these situations too often. Whereas, if I'm the coach and I see Fabian Johnson tearing it up for Gladbach in the Bundesliga, what do? I slot him into that same position with my national team and say, go do that thing again, score us a bunch of goals.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of really the test in some respects, is that, because to be honest, I mean, Johnson's been the first kind of explosive ray of life that we've seen in the U.S. national front player for a while. And, I really think if we're going to have any kind of, if we're going to get to the quarterfinals in the Copa next summer, we're going to need this new generation to really start producing or get the opportunity to, because I think the last generation is falling off incredibly fast. I mean, and I don't know how much this has to do with MLS or the schedules, or, some of these guys are just, burnt out or whatever. But I mean, you're just not seeing a lot of production out of the last generation at all, really. And I just couldn't imagine that, that you're going to depend on Dempsey and Altidore. It's just, that's the gang that it's just, there's just no production there in the last 18 months. I mean, if you're really honest about it. And then there's a new crop that seems to be, grinding their way there.
I suppose, I wonder about Dempsey and his role, and obviously not coming in for the first couple of qualifiers is an interesting development. I don't know that means he's done. But I do think that relying on him is a questionable decision moving forward. Again, as you say, though, who are you going to move to? Fabian Johnson is never going to be a player who you start to rely on for goals. That's not how his game works. That's not how he should be. Sure,
he's a cleanup guy. He's a guy that could be, I think, a really strong, cleanup guy. Well, but right now we don't have a cleanup guy. You know what I mean? Who's our cleanup guy now?
I guess I think that he's a dynamic player on the wing who's defensively solid, who passes the ball well, crosses the ball well, can help you create those opportunities. You need people to finish them. If he wants to slash and try to get his own shot, that's fine. But you also have to account for that when you work out the rest of your lineup, and certainly the whatever flank he's playing on. So do you have a fullback that's going to play well in concert with Fabian Johnson? Do you have a central midfield that can support him, find him in those dangerous spots, whether that's Michael Bradley or, in the future, perhaps a different player? I mean, certainly it's not going to be somebody like Benny Feilhaber. So how are you going to make sure that he is getting the right sort of support from the rest of his team and vice versa? I mean, it's...
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where we have this kind of big transition drop off right now, and I think in some ways we're going to have to get a lot more. We're going to have to take more chances to produce or to be a more production-driven national team. For the longest time, for a decade, we had this group that however ugly it looked, they always seemed to produce, up to a certain point at least. And, we don't see that happening in this new transition and, to all these new players. And I just think you have to put them out there and kind of in some ways almost, let them suffer through it. Because I don't think there's any other, what's the backup? Are we really going to play Altidore and Dempsey in the next 3-4 years?
Here we come to the crux of the problem for any coach, but especially now for Jurgen Klinsmann because of the hole that has been dug. So he has, those last two qualifiers were against St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Trinidad and Tobago. And there was at least some chatter. I don't think it was legitimate. I don't think it was real. I don't think they were going to fire him. partly because they weren't going to lose to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But there was at least some chatter that he had to get something out of these games or his job could be on the line. So now you're a coach who, whether you feel the pressure or not, it's certainly there on some level, and you want to get results. So now you have that. It's the eternal question: do I play kids or younger players or more inexperienced players who may crumble under this set of circumstances or that set of circumstances, or haven't played together, or need some time to bed in? Or do I play the guys that are older and maybe I trust more, who are definitely on the downside of their careers and aren't going to deliver as much as they used to? Which way do I go?
Well, I mean, this comes down to, Klinsmann, and the leadership willing to step up and say, look, this is how these two things go down. I mean, until there's nothing left, and you look like Italy or Germany did when they stuck to their old guard until nothing was left in the 90s and 2000s. And then they had these brutal transitions because you lost cycles where younger players just didn't get the opportunities, and then they're more like mid younger players. It just becomes ugly. I mean, and I just think, what's the whole point in the project of having a national team if not to, over time, have natural generational cycles?
No, sure, but again,
because we're not really,
No, I'm just saying that problem. I mean, certainly, if you're on the inside, you need to have a plan on how to do that. If you're running the team, if you're part of the organization, if you have a stake in, well, we would all have a stake in the team, but if you're one of the people who are ultimately making decisions about who's going to run the team and who's going to coach the team and what the future is, you have to have a plan for that. And I'm not sure that Klinsmann does, and that's part of the reason I'm not so happy with him right now.
Well, one of the more interesting things is it's almost like anything in life where you have a guaranteed contract. If you don't take the natural, organic life cycle risks, you're going to get fired anyways, because the results are going to be what they are. Because if you stick to the old, in anything that's life cycle driven, you lose. It doesn't matter what it is, in any field. You're still going to get paid, but you're going to lose. And then people are then going to wonder, well, can you make transitions work? Are you able to be a development-based leader? The flip side is you take these risks and you lose. I mean, it either goes one of two ways, right? It's really ugly and you get canned. You're still going to get your money. But people do respect the fact that you did attempt the life cycle, the actual approach to really develop, new players, and that you stick to the guns in this. And then maybe there's a, 1 in 3 chance or 2 in 5 chance that it works or works enough. Mm-hmm. And I just think, everybody has to give. At this point, we're locked in with Klinsmann. Whether everyone complaining all the time is kind of like irrelevant. It's like when you elect the president. I mean, it's not quite the same, obviously, but you are locked into to a track, at least for a period of time. At this point, we need to get the most out of that track. And to me, the most out of the track is to play these younger players, and in some ways burn them in. Okay, but horrific matches. What you need, and they'll be ugly.
Well, that's the thing, though. Then Klinsmann has to have the support of the federation and maybe to a lesser extent the fan base. We have to buy in that it's okay for them to look ugly as long as he is doing things that are obviously experimental. Now, at the same time, there are players that we can stomach continuing to be part of this team or definitely wants to be part of this team, like Fabian Johnson, who we just talked about. He has to be part of the team. He's probably the best American player we have right now. Beyond that, there are, a couple of different spots. Maybe I don't know. I mean, maybe you say, okay, well, he's already worked in Jassie's Artists. Let's keep doing that. Maybe Darlington Nagbe's impressed you a lot. That's not a young player, but a younger player, certainly a new player to the system who you can continue to stomach. So it's a matter of how much experimentation will satisfy you, a guy like you, Aaron, who wants to see it, or turnover will satisfy you, and how much of the old guard is still.
Well, see, I mean, the thing people never like to admit is that. So let's play out the Klinsmann doesn't develop, the future, and we ride the old, horses into the dirt, and they become our horse meat out in the field, and we starve to death, because that's basically what happens. This isn't an American phenomenon. This is the beauty of the national team concept everywhere in the world. If you ride your old generation, I mean, you start to look like all those nations that rode their old generation, and then you have that gap year where you fall apart, and then you're having to start from literally scratch, which can take usually 2 cycles minimum. So a new coach comes in, and he's going to wind up doing all the same experimentation that Klinsmann would have to, or probably would has been wanting to do, or partially doing, or we don't want him to do, whatever. So all you're doing is delaying the inevitable. Now, is that okay with people? Because after Klinsmann, we bring a good old American in, and he gets to fix it all and do the same experimentation. I mean, maybe that's just the psychology of what happens. I mean, because in some ways that happens everywhere else, right? It's okay to bring an Argentina in to do the same thing a foreign coach did in Argentina, that no one wanted the foreign coach to do, because they just couldn't support that. And I just think that's kind of the test. And I don't think that's Klinsmann's test, to be honest. I think that's the leadership of U.S. soccer, it's the media, it's everybody to say, there's no free lunch in this. At the end of the day, if you do want more than just one good team one time in history, but a continuously developing and evolving, national team, it just by nature means you have to keep bringing and experimenting in every cycle. There's no way around that. And I really think that's incumbent on everyone to really kind of buy into that. Yeah. Doesn't matter where you are in the world.
All right, fair enough. Aaron, good discussion. I'm going to wrap this one up. Appreciate the phone call, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. It was great.
There goes Aaron. We have the consensus on Twitter. Wiz is the worst, the worst name in American soccer history. No one will ever touch the Wiz, and we move on from there. I suppose, again, the current holder for worst name might be River Dogs with the capital Z. It might be. I mean, I'm just looking at and this is not fair, okay? Not fair at all, but I'm looking at the names in NPSL only, and there's some good names, and there's some bad names. The way things go. I mean, I like Bucksmont Torch FC from Percasey, Pennsylvania, which is in the Keystone Conference. By the way, nobody guessed how many teams the NPSL has. You guys are terrible. 65, maybe 66 if the River Dogs are new and added to that number. Anyway, let's wrap up this edition of Soccer Morning on a Tuesday. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to everybody who called in. Brendan, Richard, Aaron. Who did I miss? Anybody else? I missed somebody else, I'm sure. It's been a good one. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Wednesday edition of the program. Whatever's on the mind, whatever's on tap. Maybe some other new team pops up with a Z in their name. We'll do that as well. See you then, guys. Bye.